Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive.
Yep.
Today we're going to be tackling this whole idea of understanding motivation,
Yeah,
which is super relevant as you guys move into week 2 of your cultivating motivation journey.
absolutely.
I think we all know that motivation can be a little bit slippery sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's not. So hopefully by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a bunch more tools and insights to kind of keep that motivation engine running.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a really cool mix of sources for you today.
It's a great collection.
We've got everything from Atomic Habits by James Clear
That's classic.
to Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman, and even The Super Intense Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Whoa.
We've also got some really thought-provoking stuff from Everything is Fracted by Mark Manson.
That one always gets people talking.
So our mission today is really to give you a solid understanding of what motivates us as humans,
The why behind the what.
the different types of motivation that are out there, and how we can actually use all of this to achieve our goals.
Absolutely. And it's perfect timing because this all ties in with your day 5 understanding motivation activities coming up.
Exactly. So to help us break it all down, I've got an expert in motivation and human behavior with me today.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I think you'll find this deep dive particularly helpful as you start exploring your own values and brainstorming those passion projects.
Awesome. Okay, so I think a good place to start is just by talking about the different types of motivation that are out there,
Makes sense.
right? Because we've got all these books here, Atomic Habits, Authentic Happiness, even Mindset. And they all seem to agree that not all motivation is created equal.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think one of the most fundamental distinctions that we see in a lot of these books is the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Okay, intrinsic versus extrinsic.
Exactly.
Break that down for us.
So intrinsic motivation is all about doing things because you genuinely enjoy them or because they feel meaningful to you.
Okay, so it's like that internal drive.
Exactly. It's that fire that comes from within. And authentic happiness really dives deep into this. Seligman talks about how strengths like forgiveness or even a sense of playfulness can actually boost our intrinsic motivation.
So let me see if I've got this straight. If I'm learning to play the guitar just because I love music and I'm having a blast doing it,
Uh-huh.
that would be intrinsic motivation.
You got it. And the really cool thing about intrinsic motivation is that it tends to be way more powerful and sustainable than relying on external rewards or pressures.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about that other type, extrinsic motivation?
Right. So extrinsic motivation is all about external factors. Think rewards, recognition, maybe even avoiding punishment.
Okay, so it's like I'm doing this to get that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, Atomic Habits has some great insights into how we can actually use extrinsic motivation strategically, especially when we're first building a new habit.
It's like kind of a stepping stone.
Yeah, exactly. James Clear talks about this idea of habit stacking, which is basically linking a new habit that you're trying to build with an existing habit. So let's say you want to start meditating every morning, but you're having trouble making it stick.
I can relate to that.
You could try stacking that new meditation habit onto your existing habit of making coffee. You know, after you brew your coffee, you sit down and meditate for a few minutes.
Well, that's interesting.
By connecting the two, you increase your chances of actually sticking with the new habit.
Because you're already doing the coffee part.
Exactly. It becomes more automatic.
I like that. So is there a downside to leaning too heavily on extrinsic motivation?
Yeah, that's the thing. While those external motivators can be really helpful for getting us started, they're often not enough to keep us going in the long run.
Okay, I see what you mean.
It's like if you're working super hard to get a promotion just for the raise or the fancy title, what happens once you get it? You know, that initial drive might fizzle out.
Yeah, it's like you need something more to keep you going.
Right. And that's where I think the concept of why comes into play. And that's what Simon Sinek explores brilliantly in Start With Why.
Oh, yeah. Start with why. That book's been on my list forever. What's the gist?
Well, Sinek basically argues that the most inspiring leaders and organizations out there, they don't start with what they do or how they do it. They start with why they do it.
Interesting. So it's about connecting with your purpose.
Exactly. When you connect your actions to your why, it taps into that deep well of intrinsic motivation that we were talking about earlier, and that gives you a much stronger sense of meaning and fulfillment.
I love that. So it sounds like figuring out our why could be a really powerful first step, especially as we're diving into those values, explorations, and passion project brainstorms in day 5, understanding motivation.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding what truly matters to you. what drives you deep down. And this actually leads us to another fascinating piece of the motivation puzzle mindset.
Okay, mindset. I've definitely heard of that one, but remind me, what's the key takeaway?
So Carol Dweck, in her book Mindset, she basically shows us that people tend to have either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset.
Fixed versus growth.
Exactly. And people with a fixed mindset, they tend to believe that their abilities are pretty much set in stone. You know, they're either good at something or they're not.
Oh, I know people like that.
They often shy away from challenges and give up easily when things get tough because they're afraid of looking like a failure.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a recipe for getting stuck.
It definitely can be. Now, contrast that with a growth mindset. People with a growth mindset, they believe that their abilities can be developed through effort learning and persistence.
So they embrace those challenges.
Exactly. They see them as opportunities to grow and learn. They don't view setbacks as failures, but as valuable feedback.
I love that perspective.
It makes a huge difference when it comes to motivation.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be so important when you're tackling something like a passion project, which could be pretty daunting.
Absolutely. And Dweck's book is full of examples of how a growth mindset leads to more resilience, more achievement, and overall well-being. And the best part is that mindset isn't fixed. You can actually cultivate a growth mindset if that's not your natural tendency.
Okay, so that's really encouraging. We've talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, the importance of connecting with our why, and the power of mindset, but this is starting to feel like a lot.
It's a lot to unpack, for sure.
So where do we even start when it comes to actually cultivating motivation in our daily lives?
That's a great question, and I think that's where we should pick up next time. We'll dive into some practical strategies that you can use to actually boost your motivation and keep it going strong. So, when it comes to actually cultivating motivation, it's kind of like tending a garden.
Okay.
You need to create the right conditions for it to thrive.
I like that analogy.
And one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal is gratitude.
Okay, gratitude. I've been hearing a lot about gratitude lately. Is it really that big of a deal?
The research is pretty compelling. Sanja Lyubomirsky, in her book, The How of Happiness, she really digs into this. And it turns out that regularly practicing gratitude can have a huge impact on our well-being, our happiness, and yes, even our motivation.
So it's not just about feeling all warm and fuzzy.
It's way more than that. It's about shifting our focus from what we're lacking to what we have.
Yeah.
Appreciating all the good stuff in our lives, both big and small.
So how do we actually practice gratitude?
Yeah.
Is it all about those gratitude journals I keep hearing about?
Gratitude journals are definitely one way to go. Lyubomirsky suggests taking some time each week to jot down 5 things you're grateful for.
Okay.
It could be anything. A delicious meal, a supportive friend, a sunny day. The key is to really savor those experiences. Let that feeling of gratitude sink in.
I love that, savoring the good. It sounds so simple yet so powerful.
It really is. And it actually connects beautifully with Rick Hanson's work in Hardwiring Happiness.
Oh yeah, hardwiring happiness. That's another one that's been on my list. What's the connection there?
Well, Hanson talks about this idea of taking in the good.
Taking in the good.
Yeah. It's about actively internalizing positive experiences so we can actually strengthen those neural pathways in our brains
Whoa.
that are associated with well-being and motivation.
So we're literally rewiring our brains to be more positive.
In a sense, yes. You see, our brains naturally have this negativity bias, meaning they're kind of wired to focus on threats and negative experiences.
That makes sense.
But by consciously taking in the good, we can actually start to shift that balance.
Interesting. So we're not ignoring the negative or pretending everything's perfect?
Not at all. It's about creating a more balanced inner landscape, where the positive has a little more weight.
I like that.
Yeah.
So besides gratitude and taking in the good, what are some other practical things we could do to cultivate motivation?
Well, James Clear in Atomic Habits gives us a ton of really practical advice on building good habits and breaking bad ones, which is directly related to motivation.
Right, because if we can make those good habits more automatic, then it takes less willpower.
Exactly. He emphasizes the importance of making good habits obvious and easy and making bad habits invisible and difficult.
So like if I want to eat healthier, I should stock my fridge with healthy options and hide the junk food.
Precisely. It's about designing your environment to support the habits you want to build.
That's so smart.
And this applies to any area of life.
Yeah.
If you want to exercise more, put your workout clothes out the night before.
Right.
If you want to read more, keep a book on your bedside table. It's about removing those barriers, making it as frictionless as possible to do the things that will move you towards your goals.
Small changes, big impact. I love that.
Absolutely. Now, another key piece of the motivation puzzle, I think, is understanding how our feeling brain plays a role.
Okay, our feeling brain. This sounds intriguing.
Yeah, so Mark Manson in Everything is Frecked, he argues that our emotions are often the driving force behind our actions.
Even when we think we're being totally logical.
Exactly. So instead of trying to fight our feelings or ignore them, he suggests that we need to learn to empathize with them.
So like if I'm feeling unmotivated to work on a project instead of beating myself up about it, I should try to figure out why I'm feeling that way.
Exactly. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe you're burned out, maybe you just need a break. Once you understand the root of the feeling, you can address it more effectively.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Especially when you're thinking about your passion projects.
Oh, absolutely.
Because those can bring up all sorts of emotions.
They definitely can.
Yeah.
So yeah, tapping into that self-awareness and emotional intelligence is key.
Okay, so we're rewiring our brains for positivity. We're designing our environments for success. We're understanding our feeling brain. And then there's also this whole thing about mastering our mindset.
Right. Because ultimately our thoughts and beliefs have a powerful impact on our reality.
Okay, so tell me more about this whole master your mindset thing. What's the main takeaway there?
Well, Michael Pilarczyk, in his book, Master Your Mindset, he basically emphasizes that we have this incredible power within us, the power to choose our thoughts and beliefs. And in doing so, we can actually create the reality we desire.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
In a way, yes. He actually tells this really compelling anecdote about a woman named Ruth who dreams of starting her own business, but she faces a lot of resistance and negativity from her family and friends.
Oh, no.
But despite their doubts, she stays determined and ultimately achieves her goal.
That's awesome. It's like a classic story of believing in yourself even when others doubt you.
Exactly. And Pillar 6 point is that we all have that power within us, that power to choose our thoughts and beliefs and create the life we want.
Wow, that's really empowering. Especially when it comes to pursuing those passions that you might have identified in day 5, understanding motivation.
For sure. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about gratitude, taking in the good habit formation, understanding our feeling, brain mastering our mindset.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So I'm curious, what's resonating with you the most so far?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's this idea that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to motivation.
Interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, we've talked about all these different strategies, but I'm realizing that what works for one person might not work for another.
Right. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. And it's about being kind to ourselves along the way because we all face setbacks and dips in motivation. It's part of the human experience.
Couldn't agree more. And Solve for Happy really drives that point home.
I was just thinking about that book.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get discouraged when we hit those roadblocks. Any advice on how to navigate those challenging moments?
Well, Mo Gaudat in Solve for Happy, he shares his incredibly powerful journey of finding motivation and peace after experiencing a profound loss.
It's an amazing story.
It really is. And one of the key takeaways is that happiness is a choice.
Even in the face of adversity.
Exactly. And that's a powerful concept to keep in mind when you're working towards your goals, especially those passion projects that we've been talking about.
So how do we actually make that choice to be happy, especially when we're feeling anything but...
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, Gaudat suggests that we need to reframe our perspective, shift our focus from what we've lost to what we still have.
Okay, so focusing on the positive.
Exactly. He also emphasizes the importance of gratitude even in the darkest of times.
That's powerful.
And he reminds us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We can choose how we respond to challenges, and that choice determines our experience.
It's giving me chills. It's so inspiring to hear stories of people who have overcome such immense challenges and found a way to not just survive, but thrive.
It's truly remarkable, and it speaks to the incredible resilience of the human spirit. You know, we all have that capacity within us, that capacity to find strength and motivation, even when it feels impossible.
So how do we tap into that resilience? Where do we even begin?
I think a great starting point is to connect with your values and your why.
Okay, our why again.
Exactly. When you have a clear sense of purpose, it gives you a compass to navigate through those difficult times, especially when you're trying to bring those passion projects to life.
And what about all those practical strategies we talked about? Gratitude taking and the good habit formation, understanding our feeling brain.
Those are all incredibly valuable tools. And I think they're especially relevant when we're facing challenges. It's about finding the practices that help you to ground yourself, to regulate your emotions, and to stay connected to what truly matters.
Just like building a toolkit.
Exactly. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination. It's about continuously learning, experimenting, and refining your approach to cultivating motivation. This is something you'll continue to explore long after you finish day 5. understanding motivation.
This has been so insightful. I'm feeling much more equipped to tackle this whole motivation thing. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, is there anything in these sources that surprised you? Any unexpected insights that you found particularly fascinating?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the story of Notes Day at Pixar from Rebel Talent.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Tell me about it.
So apparently Pixar has this tradition where during the development of a film, they dedicate an entire day to giving and receiving brutally honest feedback.
Whoa, that sounds intense.
It is, but the results are incredible. By embracing this radical candor, they're able to identify and address problems really early on,
Yeah, it makes sense.
which ultimately leads to those amazing films that we all know and love. It's a great example of how stepping outside your comfort zone and being open to feedback can lead to incredible outcomes.
It's like a testament to the power of embracing discomfort.
Exactly. And it actually reminds me of another important point that came up in our discussion, self-compassion.
Oh, yeah, we can't forget about that. It's so easy to be our own worst critics. So especially when we're struggling with motivation.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Authentic happiness really emphasizes this. Seligman talks about the importance of forgiveness both towards ourselves and others.
Mm-hmm.
We all make mistakes. We all face setbacks. It's about learning to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding even when we fall short of our own expectations.
So give yourself a break.
Exactly. And this is something to keep in mind as you explore your values and passions. It's a journey, and there will be bumps along the road.
This has been such a rich and insightful exploration of motivation. I'm feeling so much more informed and empowered to tackle my own motivational challenges. And I hope our listeners are feeling the same.
Me too.
So as you guys gear up for day 5, Understanding Motivation, which is all about tapping into your values and brainstorming those passion projects, let's recap some of the key insights from our deep dive that can really help you along the way.
Sounds good.
We started by exploring the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Remember, intrinsic motivation, that fire that comes from within, that's way more sustainable in the long run.
It's the fuel that keeps you going.
And connecting your actions to your values and your why, that's like pouring gasoline on that fire.
Absolutely. And as you delve into your values, exploration activities keep those different types of motivation in mind. What truly lights you up? What makes you feel energized and engaged?
That those are clues to what intrinsically motivates you. Start with, why was a real eye-opener for me in terms of connecting with our purpose?
Such a powerful book.
When we understand our why, it gives our actions so much more meaning and depth. And it can be a powerful compass as you start brainstorming those passion projects.
For sure.
And don't forget, mindset plays a huge role in motivation too. Cultivating a growth mindset where you believe in your ability to learn and grow, that's going to be a game changer when you inevitably hit those challenges along the way.
It's all about embracing the journey.
And we can't forget about the practical stuff either. Atomic Habits gave us some fantastic tips for building positive habits that support our goals. Think habit stacking, shaping our environment, all those little tweaks that can make a big difference.
Small hinges swing big doors.
I love that. And remember, motivation and happiness, they go hand in hand. The How of Happiness reminded us of the power of gratitude, mindfulness, engaging in activities that bring us joy.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. So as you're brainstorming passion projects, think about what genuinely excites you, what makes you feel alive.
Follow your bliss.
Okay, but what about when motivation takes a dip? We all experience that.
It happens to the best of us.
Solve for Happy offered some powerful reframing techniques, right? It's about choosing happiness, even amidst challenges, and viewing setbacks as opportunities for growth.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
And think back to that Pixar story from Rebel Talent, embracing those Notes Day critiques. That's how they create movie magic. Applying that same openness to feedback to your own passion projects can lead to some amazing breakthroughs.
Absolutely.
And of course, we can't forget about self-compassion, especially when those inevitable bumps in the road show up. We all stumble, we all make mistakes.
It's part of being human.
Authentic happiness reminds us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding throughout this whole journey.
Be your own best friend.
Okay, so as you dive into day 5, understanding motivation and beyond, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Yeah.
How can understanding your feeling brain, as Mark Manson puts it in Everything, is fracked?
That's a good one. And here's another one to chew on. How might understanding those different thinking systems that Daniel Kahneman describes in Thinking Fast and Slow
Oh yeah, another classic.
further enhance your ability to make choices that really align with your values and goals?
We've covered so much ground today. From the science of habits to the power of purpose. From the importance of mindset to the art of happiness.
It's all connected.
And it all comes together to empower you on your motivation journey. So keep experimenting, keep learning, and most importantly, keep that motivation burning bright.
Couldn't have said it better myself.